I mean, I really want you to picture something for a second. It is the year 2026. You are waking up, you reach over to the nightstand to grab your phone, and you're instinctively bracing yourself for that usual morning routine.
Right, the inevitable morning doom scroll.
Exactly. You know the exact drill. You open an app and you instantly hit that wall of algorithmic fatigue. You get that sinking feeling, that you're just sifting through this massive, endless mountain of content that some black box computer program has decided you just have to see today.
Yeah, the algorithm's daily required reading.
Right. And the infinite scroll just stretches out ahead of you. But then, before you can even swipe your thumb, you get a notification that completely stops you in your tracks. It's an unexpected push alert right in the center of your screen, and it says, MySpace is back.
It genuinely sounds like a glitch in the Matrix or maybe a prank from a time traveler, but it is very real, and the implications of it are honestly shaping up everything we thought we knew about the trajectory of the modern internet.
Which is exactly our focus for today's deep dive. We are looking at this really fascinating, highly reflective essay. It's written by an entrepreneur who actually credits their very first business success to the original MySpace.
Yeah, and they're using this bizarre 2026 revival as a lens to examine something much larger and honestly much more pressing.
Completely. Our mission today is to figure out why on earth millions of people are suddenly flocking back to a 20-year-old website layout. We're going to explore what this digital migration reveals about the fundamentally broken state of modern digital marketing.
It's a real diagnosis of systemic exhaustion.
It really is. And we're also going to look at how algorithms intercept our connections, and most importantly, what the playbook is for you to stop renting your digital audience and start actually owning it. Okay, let's unpack this because the numbers are wild.
Yeah, we really need to ground this in the sheer scale of what is happening in this 2026 landscape. Otherwise, this just sounds like an internet rumor. A couple of years ago, MySpace was sitting at a mere 200,000 users globally. It was essentially a digital ghost town.
Just like a graveyard of forgotten HTML and broken image links, abandoned band profiles.
Exactly. But today, the user base has skyrocketed to roughly 6 million users. That is a massive, sudden influx of active attention. And the Vanderhook brothers, the current owners of the platform, they're leaning into this momentum with a full official relaunch.
Wow. 6 million.
Yeah, but it isn't the technology they are pushing that's interesting here. It's their pitch to the public. It is a deeply subversive proposition for the modern era.
Right, because they aren't pitching like some new VR integration or seamless AI-generated avatars.
Yes, not at all.
They're actively pitching the absence of modern features. The Vanderhooks are explicitly promising a chronological feed with no algorithm. They are guaranteeing no infinite endless scroll. They're actually taking out ads to loudly announce that their platform is deliberately not engineered to keep you trapped.
Which goes against every standard operating procedure of the tech industry for, the last 15 years.
Seriously.
The entire multi-trillion-dollar digital economy is built on algorithmic prediction and behavioral engineering. To launch a platform and proudly state, we refuse to optimize your behavior. That is a radical rejection of the modern internet's core business model.
It really makes me think about how we actually experience these modern feeds today, both as consumers and creators. Because opening up a modern social media app, it feels exactly like walking into a windowless casino.
Oh, that's a really good way to put it.
Right. Because the architecture of a casino is deliberately designed to disorient you and sever your connection to the outside world. There are no clocks on the walls. The carpets have these visually confusing, hypnotic patterns. The exits are totally hidden behind a maze of slot machines.
And they pump in oxygen and offer free drinks, so you just lose track of time.
Exactly. You just keep pulling the lever. That architecture is the physical equivalent of the endless scroll. That is the algorithmic feed.
And the feed is engineered to eliminate all friction, right? It's maximizing your time on device. In a casino, friction is having to reach into your wallet for cash, which is why they use chips or digital credits.
Oh, right.
On a phone, friction is having to click to the next page, which is why the endless scroll was invented. Every time you pause, hover, or rewatch a video, that behavioral data is tracked, fed into a server, and used to calculate precisely which piece of content will keep you staring at the screen for another 3 seconds.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
You are not the customer in that scenario. Your attention is the raw material being extracted and sold to advertisers.
But then the Vanderhook brothers are pitching this new MySpace like it's a digital community center. You walk in the front doors, you see your friends, you check out the community bulletin board to see what happened today, you have a quick chat, and then you leave.
You just walk away?
Right. You walk back out the front doors when you are done. The building itself isn't actively conspiring to trap you inside.
That casino analogy perfectly captures the core psychology driving this migration. Users are simply exhausted. They are suffering from a deep systemic fatigue.
Yeah, I totally agree.
For over a decade, platforms have treated human connection as a resource to be mined. So when a platform finally comes along and says, hey, we aren't going to manipulate your dopamine receptors, people flock to it.
I think a lot of people looking at this phenomenon from the outside are completely misdiagnosing the appeal, though. The immediate reaction from the mainstream tech press has been very dismissive.
Very dismissive.
They're writing these articles saying, oh, look, millennials are just feeling nostalgic. The prevailing theory is that everyone is just returning for a funny, ironic moment to recreate their top 8 friends list and, like, listen to old music.
According to our source material, that assumption completely misses the mark. Nostalgia is just the storefront display that gets users through the door. It lowers the barrier to entry.
It's the Trojan horse.
Yes, exactly. But the unmediated chronological timeline is the actual product they are staying for. The real draw is the return of a direct, unfiltered line to their people.
Let's bring in the author of our source essay here, because their origin story perfectly illustrates the mechanics of that unmediated connection. Back in the original MySpace era, this author was young, totally broke, and trying to run a scrappy little online marketing and design shop.
They had absolutely zero budget.
None. They had no professional network in the industry. They literally did not know how to find a single client.
They did, however, have a very sharp observation. They noticed that independent bands and small local businesses were starting to realize their target demographics were hanging out on MySpace.
Right.
The problem was those bands and businesses had these clunky, terrible-looking default profile pages that completely failed to represent their brand.
So the author decides to teach themselves HTML and CSS. They are just brute forcing their way through coding tutorials so they could offer complete custom MySpace page overhauls. We are talking custom layouts, wild backgrounds, animated intros, embedded music players, the absolute works.
What's fascinating here is the mechanism they use to grow that business, because it highlights everything missing from the 2026 landscape.
Yeah.
There was zero ad spend, there was no complex marketing funnel software, no lead generation magnets, and no automated drip campaigns.
They basically ignored modern marketing entirely. They just found a terrible-looking profile, built a mock-up of a better one, and sent a direct message to the band or the business owner.
Manual, one-to-one outreach. They found the right people and just spoke to them like human beings. The essay notes that a staggering number of people wrote back, hired them on the spot, and then naturally showed off the new profile to their own network.
Which is incredible.
The business grew organically because human-to-human interaction was the ultimate growth hack. That kind of raw, unintercepted connection has been systematically eradicated in today's automated, algorithmic landscape.
I have to push back on this romanticization of the old web, though. Because we are talking about this direct connection like it was some kind of pristine utopian paradise. Wasn't the old MySpace a totally chaotic nightmare to actually use?
Oh, it was a total mess.
I remember it being incredibly abrasive. You'd click on a friend's profile and suddenly you are blasted with auto-playing screamo music at maximum volume. Your cursor turns into a glittering magic wand that trails stars, and the background is a neon-tiled GIF that literally gives you a migraine.
It was an aesthetic disaster.
Right. So why on earth are we looking back at that absolute mess and preferring it over today's clean, highly curated, algorithmically smoothed out feeds?
Well, your memory is completely accurate. Aesthetically, it was absolute chaos. But the fondness people are feeling isn't actually about the glittering cursors or the auto-playing music. It is entirely about the concept of digital agency.
Okay, agency.
We traded that messy agency for convenience, and now we resent the convenience because it feels like a cage. In that loud, early 2000s ecosystem, you had control. You chose the song, you chose the background.
That makes a lot of sense.
And far more importantly, if you sent a message or posted an update, the platform did not intercept it. Today's feeds are clean because they are ruthlessly sanitized and managed by a machine that decides, based on profit margins, who is allowed to speak to whom.
So the messiness was just the price of freedom. You had to put up with the neon backgrounds to get the chronological feed.
Precisely. And that brings us to the core thesis the author identifies regarding the modern digital landscape. This raises an important question about how, over the last decade, we have quietly transitioned from an era of ownership to an era of tenancy.
The great audience swindle. Let's get deeply into the mechanics of this, because this is where the author's essay gets incredibly sharp, especially for anyone trying to run a business today. There's the golden rule in the old internet model. If somebody clicked add friend or follow, they saw your updates, period. It was chronological, it was guaranteed, and it was straightforward.
The relationship was strictly one-to-one. The platform was functioning merely as the infrastructure. Think of it like the telephone lines connecting two houses. The phone company doesn't listen to your call and decide whether or not to actually transmit your voice based on how engaging they think you are. They just connect the line.
But the modern reality on places like Instagram, TikTok, or X is fundamentally different. The platform itself actively inserts itself into the middle of that relationship. It intercepts the signal.
It really does.
It decides, post by post, minute by minute, if the people who explicitly ask to follow you will ever even see your content in their feed.
This is where we have to look at the algorithmic economics of why platforms do this. When a social media giant is new, they offer massive organic reach to incentivize creators to join and bring their audiences.
They want you to move in.
Exactly. But eventually, user growth caps out. They run out of new humans on Earth to sign up. When user growth stops, the only way to appease shareholders and increase revenue is to squeeze the existing user base. They do this by quietly throttling organic reach.
Wow.
The harsh truth laid out in the source is that on modern social media, you do not own your audience. You are simply renting access to them. And the landlord, the platform, is raising the rent every single year.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that economic shift takes a massive emotional and financial toll on creators. Think about the reality of this for a small business owner. You spend 5 years grinding, posting every single day, following all the shifting best practices the platform dictates.
It's exhausting work.
And you finally build up a community of 100,000 people who genuinely love your work. And then, overnight, the platform tweaks a few lines of code in their algorithm. Suddenly, you are shadow banned. Your reach plummets to 10% of what it was the day before.
The invisible machine severs the connection. You didn't move. Your audience didn't leave. But the bridge between you was basically dismantled.
A shadow ban isn't just a glitch. It is essentially the landlord arbitrarily deciding your digital storefront is invisible today because you didn't pay them for premium foot traffic.
The source pulls in a brilliant reference from Inc. magazine to solidify this point. The article notes that the follower count, this massive vanity metric that brands have obsessed over for an entire decade, is now practically meaningless. Reach and followers stopped being the same metric a long time ago.
That is such a gut punch. 1 million followers does not equal 1 million customers. It doesn't even equal 1 million viewers.
No, 1 million followers simply equals 1 million people that the algorithm might allow you to talk to, provided you are willing to pay for the privilege through boosted posts or targeted ads. The platform has effectively taken your own community hostage, and they are charging you a ransom just to speak to the people who asked to hear from you.
So what does this all mean? If you are sitting there listening to this, realizing you are just renting your audience right now, how do you actually escape this? Do we just abandon social media entirely? Because for most brands, that seems like commercial suicide.
Yeah, you can't just unplug. But the author doesn't just diagnose this disease. They provide a very specific 2026 escape playbook.
Let's hear it.
The playbook requires a fundamental shift in how you view digital assets. The first and most crucial step is to own the connection. You have to systematically move your highest value audience off of rented land and onto infrastructure that you completely control.
And the ultimate answer the author gives for this is going to sound painfully boring.
Yeah.
It is completely unglamorous, but it is wildly effective email.
Email remains the bedrock of digital sovereignty because it operates on open protocols, not within a walled garden owned by a single corporation.
Okay.
According to the source, smart founders treat their email list as their single biggest asset. It is not an afterthought, it is the central nervous system of their business. Because no algorithm can change the rules overnight and block you from reaching an inbox.
If you have someone's email address, you hold the direct line. Building a brand exclusively on modern social media is like building a multi-million-dollar custom-designed mansion on a piece of property owned by a capricious landlord.
Yeah, a landlord who changes the rules constantly.
You spend years picking out the drapes, landscaping the yard, making the house absolutely perfect, but the landlord can just walk up at any moment, change the locks on the front gate, and say, actually, None of your friends are allowed to visit this house anymore unless they pay a toll at the edge of the property.
It's an incredibly fragile, high-risk foundation for a business. Transitioning to email removes that risk entirely.
Having an email list is like holding the actual physical deed to your own house. You own the land beneath the building. But, getting people to hand over that email address requires getting them to pay attention to you in the first place. Which brings us to the second step in the author's playbook, talk like a human.
The context of the year 2026 is vital here. The internet is increasingly flooded with AI-generated sludge.
So much sludge.
We are drowning in automated replies, synthetic SEO articles, bot-driven comment sections, and perfectly polished corporate speak. In that environment, a genuine, slightly imperfect personal message is incredibly disruptive.
Back in the MySpace days, the author's direct messages worked because they were clearly from a real person hustling for work. Today, a manual DM works because it implies time spent, and human time is a very scarce resource online.
It proves you actually care.
Right. When you take the time to write a real message or write an email that sounds like it came from a person rather than a marketing committee, it cuts through the noise far more effectively than it did 20 years ago. Humanity itself has become a differentiator.
But writing genuine messages and building real connections takes a tremendous amount of manual effort. If you are going to invest that kind of time, you cannot afford to do it on a crowded feed where your message gets buried in 3 seconds. You have to go where the environment is quiet. This is the third tactic. Follow the leaking invention.
Because the cost of acquiring a customer in the digital casino is simply too high. The big brands have bid up the price of ads to astronomical levels. So the author stresses finding where the exhausted users are retreating to.
It is a classic arbitrage maneuver. A significant chunk of tired users are quietly abandoning the massive, hyper-optimized platforms. They are retreating to smaller, quieter digital spaces, newsletters, private Discord servers, or revived retro platforms like MySpace.
Seeking out some peace and quiet.
Yeah, and when a migration like that happens, there is a brief window of opportunity. It is cheap and easy to reach people in these new spaces before the massive advertisers build the infrastructure to follow them. Most businesses arrive years late to these shifts. The strategic advantage goes to those who arrive early.
And finally, the fourth step, which ties directly back to why this MySpace revival is happening in the first place. Wield authentic nostalgia. Targeting millennials with early 2000s sounds, aesthetics, and user interfaces is a proven shortcut to their hearts. But the author includes a massive caveat about the mechanics of how this works. You absolutely cannot fake it.
Borrowed nostalgia is highly transparent, and modern consumers have an incredibly calibrated radar for corporate optimization. If a massive, faceless brand tries to adopt a clunky, HTML-coded aesthetic to look retro, it usually fails.
Yeah, it just looks weird.
The kerning on the text is too perfect. The image compression is too clean. It still looks like it was generated by a marketing team.
Authentic nostalgia requires the friction of human imperfection. It has to look like a real person actually struggles with the code. If the nostalgia isn't authentic to your brand's actual history or your genuine voice, consumers will see right through the storefront display.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, all these tactics migrating your audience to open protocols like email, communicating with unpolished humanity, capitalizing on the migration to quieter platforms, and utilizing genuine nostalgia, they all point toward a singular philosophy.
Would you?
The ultimate modern marketing strategy is actually a regression. It is a return to basic digital sovereignty. It requires actively rejecting the tenant mindset that tech monopolies have conditioned us to accept and forcefully reclaiming ownership of our digital assets and our human connections.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I think it is really important to acknowledge the sobering reality check our source provides at the very end of the essay. 6 million users suddenly appearing on a revived MySpace is a fantastic, headline-grabbing story. But mathematically speaking, it is a rounding error compared to the billions of daily active users held by the tech giants.
The author openly admits that this specific platform comeback might ultimately fizzle out. MySpace might not actually win the platform war.
But the author's overarching point is that whether this specific website survives or not doesn't really matter. The lesson has already been exposed. The migration itself is the message. Users are exhausted by being treated like products to be manipulated in a windowless casino. And creators are exhausted by being treated like sharecroppers, whose rent is constantly being raised by an invisible algorithm.
It proves that the appetite for an alternative is real, it is visceral, and it is growing. And it leaves us with something quite profound to consider regarding the future of our digital architecture.
What's that?
Algorithms were originally pitched to society as a magical tool to help us sort through the noise and see more of what we love. But they have slowly devolved into extraction mechanisms that only show us what keeps us trapped or what brands pay for us to see. What happens to society when an entire generation realizes they have never actually experienced an unmediated chronological internet? Will a simple, unfiltered timeline, just a plain list of what your friends are doing, in the exact order they did it, soon become the ultimate luxury item in the digital world?
I really want you to look at your own digital habits this week. Look at where you spend your time, how you consume information, and where your most important contacts live. Ask yourself the hard question. Are you just renting your connections from a landlord who can change the locks tomorrow, or do you actually own them?